Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of extreme precision.
Right, it feels engineered.
Exactly. Like you
Yeah.
break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line on the screen, and the
Mhm.
doctor just points at it and says, there it is, there's the problem.
Yeah, it's entirely binary. I mean, the bone is either fractured or it isn't.
Right, it's clean. But then you step into the world of human behavior, specifically looking at brand loyalty or cultural movements or even just why we buy the things we buy. And suddenly that x-ray machine is just completely broken.
Absolutely shattered.
The landscape is murky. It defies that kind of clinical logic. I mean, you look at 50,000 people standing in the freezing rain just to hear a single note from a musical artist, people literally crying before the song even starts.
Right.
And you realize you can't put that on an x-ray.
No, you really can't. It is the absolute definition
Yeah.
of diagnostic muddy waters.
Yeah.
I mean, it completely defies rational economic logic. Like, why would someone pay 1,000% markup for a basic piece of fabric just because it has a specific, red rectangle sewn onto it?
Yeah, it makes no sense on paper.
Exactly. Economists would call that irrational.
Yeah.
But psychologists, well, they call it identity.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking today. Welcome to the deep dive. We are exploring the psychological and neurological architecture behind why we, as humans, become completely obsessed with certain brands, ideas, or creators.
And we have some incredible source material for this.
We do. We are using a really fascinating text as our foundation today. It's excerpts from a book called Obsession Engineering, Science of Story, Control, and Identity by Hardik Bansali.
It's a heavy hitter.
It really is. And the goal of this deep dive for you listening today is to deconstruct those neurological foundations of human attachment. And then we're going to explore the highly practical design frameworks that founders and creators use to build these legacy-focused, unforgettable experiences.
Because the stakes here, according to the author, are incredibly high. Right now, most billion-dollar brands out there are just, well, completely forgettable.
Yeah, the book calls them digital mannequins, right?
Yes, digital mannequins, which is such a brilliant cutting phrase. I mean,
Yeah.
they have a pristine user interface, they optimize for clicks, they A/B test their absolute souls out of existence, but they fail entirely to leave a mark on the human nervous system.
They're hollow.
Exactly, they're hollow. So today, we're going to look at how the rare few manage to cross what the text calls the obsession gap.
The obsession gap. I love that term. Let's dig into that right away because honestly, it feels like the core problem every founder, every creator, and anyone trying to communicate an idea faces right now.
Oh, without a doubt.
The source defines this gap as the vast, echoing emotional space between mere visibility and mental ownership.
Right.
So visibility is, your ad clicks, your clean website design, your impressions. But mental ownership is loyalty, it's rituals, it's devotion.
It's the difference between you casually scrolling past a beautifully designed app and coming back to an app every single day. Because deleting it would feel like deleting a part of your own personality.
Wow, yeah. Deleting a part of yourself. But why does that gap even exist?
Well, the author argues, and quite convincingly, I think, that we have fundamentally confused visibility with vitality.
Interesting.
We've mistaken algorithmic presence for actual human power. I mean, think about it. Brands today are designing to be liked. They want to perform well in a quarterly pitch deck.
So they just play it safe.
Exactly. What do? They adopt the exact same pastel color palettes, the same corporate Memphis art style, the same empty promises of fostering community and driving innovation.
They aren't designing to be lived through.
Right, they're designing to be frictionless.
But friction is where the grip is.
Exactly. If you swapped one of these modern corporate logos with a direct competitor's logo on their homepage, I mean, no one would even notice.
Probably not.
They stop at capturing your attention for 3 seconds. But the text makes a foundational point here. Being seen means absolutely nothing if you are not remembered. Attention is a commodity. Obsession is an architecture.
Okay, so if we want to cross that gap, if you're listening to this and you're trying to figure out how to take your project from just being seen to being deeply remembered, the book argues we have to look backward.
Way backward.
Yeah, way backward. We have to look at the oldest piece of human technology we have, which is stories. The text literally calls stories weapons.
It does. It points out that human beings, we didn't evolve with spreadsheets.
Right.
We didn't evolve to process bullet points on a PowerPoint slide. We evolved with myths around a fire.
If we connect this to the deeper neuroscience of evolutionary psychology, storytelling began as survival tech, didn't it?
Oh, entirely. It was never intended just for entertainment. It was a literal evolutionary simulation. Picture a group of early humans sitting around a fire, and an elder tells a story about a young boy who wandered too far from the cave at night, heard a rustling in the bushes, and never came back.
The silence that follows that story around the fire must be heavy.
Terrifying. And your brain, sitting by that fire, processes that fear, that adrenaline, and
Yep.
it stores the lesson of the story as if it were a first-hand lived memory.
Because facts are jagged.
Right. If the elder just stood up and said, statistically, mortality rates increase by 80% outside the cave after dark, your brain just does not care.
It demands intellect to process that.
Exactly. But stories. Stories wrap facts in emotion. They provide cause and effect. They bypass the analytical prefrontal cortex entirely and plant knowledge directly into the nervous system.
Straight into the amygdala.
Right, where fear and emotional memory live.
So the brain doesn't actually want the objective truth. It just wants a pattern that makes it feel safe.
Yes, safety is the ultimate goal.
And there is this incredible, highly specific example in the text to illustrate this neurological quirk. It's the story of Mohan and Raju.
Yeah, the 6-year-olds.
Yeah, two 6-year-old boys who play in the local park every day. Now, Raju, without fail, always leaves the park by 6 p.m. sharp.
Not a minute late.
Nope. And it's not because he's tired, and it's not because he checked his watch. It's because his mother told him a story. She said, after 6 p.m., a monster comes out to the park and takes away children who stay too long.
Classic parenting tactic.
Right. So Raju goes home. He is safe, he is obedient, and he is deeply terrified. But his friend Mohan, he stays until 8 p.m. every single night.
And the tension just builds for Raju until one day he finally asked Mohan, "Why aren't you afraid of the monster?"
And Mohan just laughs. He says, I stay late every day, there is no monster, nothing happens.
And this creates a massive cognitive crisis for Raju.
And this is where I want to pause and push back a little, or at least play devil's advocate for you listening, because logically, Raju just received new data, right?
Right.
Mohan provided empirical evidence that the monster doesn't exist. So why doesn't Raju just say, oh, cool, no monster, I'll stay out late? Why is it a crisis?
Because the brain hates cognitive dissonance way more than it loves truth. I mean, Raju doesn't just have a fact about a monster. He has an identity built around avoiding it.
Oh, I see.
He is the good, safe boy who listens to his mother. So Mohan's data doesn't just challenge a fact, it threatens Raju's entire psychological ecosystem.
Wow.
The story continues. Raju's curiosity finally outweighs his fear, and he decides to stay past 6 p.m.
Right. 6 o'clock comes and goes. No monster. There's just the sound of leaves blowing and maybe a distant tea stall closing up.
Nothing happens.
Nothing. But the text points out that in that specific moment, something massive and irreversible shifts in Raju's inner world. His intellect deciphers a new, terrifying truth. My mother lied to me.
And that realization rewrites his entire identity.
Exactly. Raju didn't change his mind because of Mohan's logic. He changed it because the experience of staying late completely shattered his previous identity.
And this, right here, is the core synthesis of how human obsession forms. This is the blueprint for the deep dive.
Let's lay it out.
An experience becomes a story. The story becomes a belief. The belief hardens into an identity. And then, and this is the most crucial part for anyone trying to build a brand, the identity starts acting as an active defense mechanism.
So it protects itself.
Yes. The text notes that from that day forward, anytime Raju's mother tells him something, his brain filters it through this newly forged belief. He thinks, maybe she's lying again.
The brain protects the news story with intense ferocity because the story now feels like the self.
Exactly. We do this constantly in our own lives. I mean,
Yeah.
think about it. Every political opinion you hold, every brand loyalty you have, every deep-seated fear you carry, it all started as a story you decided to trust.
We almost never change our minds from receiving new information alone.
Never. You can't just hand someone a white paper and expect them to change their worldview.
Right, we only change when a new experience hits us so hard that it shatters our current belief system.
It's messy, and it's entirely emotional. Which brings up the central architectural question of the book. If a story provides this safe neurological pattern, how do we make the listener or the app user or the customer feel like they are the ones actually driving that pattern?
Because if they feel like they're just being lectured to, they'll reject it immediately.
Exactly. You have to make them feel like the author of the experience. Which brings us straight into the second psychological pillar of obsession, the illusion of control.
I love how the source explains this because it uses an analogy that literally every single person listening to this has experienced: the elevator button.
Oh, this is so universally true.
Picture this. You're walking up to an elevator bank in a lobby. You can clearly see that the up button is already glowing red. Someone else has already pressed it.
The machine knows people are waiting.
Right. But what do? You walk up and you press the glowing button anyway.
Every single time.
Why do we do that? We know perfectly well it's not going to make the elevator arrive a millisecond faster.
But we press it because we have a deep psychological need to feel involved. We crave the illusion of control.
And neurologically, there is a profound survival-based reason for this quirk, isn't there?
There is. Feeling in control, even if that control is demonstrably fake, physiologically calms the human nervous system.
It's soothing.
It is. It sends a signal to your brain that says, I am an active participant in my environment. I can predict what's going to happen next.
And safety is the absolute non-negotiable gateway to attachment.
Precisely. We don't just crave control for the sake of power. We need it to feel safe enough to lower our emotional drawbridges.
That perfectly explains the initial explosion of the crypto and Web3 boom.
Oh, that's a great example from the text.
Right. I mean, the text makes a great point here. Crypto didn't just hook millions of people because they suddenly developed a deep passion for cryptographic hashing algorithms and decentralized ledgers.
Definitely not.
It hooked them because it made them feel like they were part of a massive historical rebellion. They were sticking it to the banks. They were rewriting the financial rules.
It gave them agency.
Exactly. Even if all they did was buy a tiny fraction of a coin on a centralized app, they felt like they were holding the steering wheel of the global economy.
They took a highly complex, abstract technology and turned it into an experience of personal ownership. And you see this illusion of control explicitly and intentionally engineered in the best digital designs today.
Like where?
Think about the skip intro button on Netflix. Netflix could easily just auto-skip the intro for binge watchers, and sometimes they do. But giving you that button, it's a micro moment of power.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Or think about a product configurator where you can change the color of a sneaker's laces before you buy it online. Or a software tool that gives you a toggle switch during setup, asking if you want beginner mode or expert mode.
These are not life-changing, high-stakes decisions.
Not at all. They are micro moments of agency. They whisper to the user, you aren't just passively consuming this, you're actively shaping it.
It really reminds me of the classic IKEA effect.
Oh yeah, the sandcastle analogy.
Right. It's like a kid fighting significantly harder to protect a messy, lopsided sandcastle that they built with their own two hands, rather than a perfect, pristine sandcastle built by a professional stranger.
Because ownership breeds deep attachment.
Exactly.
Right.
When you invest your own effort into something, even if it's just a click, you care about it more.
And the text maps this exact psychological process out into what it calls the immersion loop.
Let's break that loop down.
It's the specific cycle that transitions a casual user into an obsessed advocate. It's a sequential chain. It starts with emotion.
Okay.
The design or the story makes you feel something, maybe curiosity, maybe a little thrill. Then, immediately, it offers control. It asks you to interact, to make a choice, to press the button.
And because you made a choice, you feel identity forming.
Exactly. You subconsciously think, this interesting thing happened because of my action. I caused this.
Right.
That feeling of causality leads to protection, where you start defending the experience to others or rationalizing your time spent on it, which naturally guarantees return. You come back.
And the return generates more emotion.
Yep. So it's emotion, control, identity, protection, return, and back to emotion.
Wait, let me unpack that step from control to identity, because that feels like the magic trick of this whole thing. How exactly does pressing a button or making a small choice leap all the way to identity? I mean, isn't that a bit of a stretch?
It sounds like a stretch until you realize how the brain attributes value. When you passively watch a movie, you evaluate it. You say, the director did a good job.
Right.
But when you play a video game and you move the joystick to dodge an attack, your brain doesn't say, the game designer did a good job. Your brain says, I survived.
Oh, that is wild.
The emotion you feel, the adrenaline, is attributed to your own skill. When a user feels emotion and simultaneously believes they caused that emotion through their own control, the boundary between the brand's product and the user's self-concept begins to blur.
The experience shifts from being a tool they use to a reflection of who they are.
Exactly. It's incredibly powerful. It shifts the entire dynamic. You're no longer trying to convince them your product is great. You've engineered an environment where they convince themselves they are great while using your product.
Which leads us directly into the deep end of the psychology here, the identity loop.
The dangerous part.
Because the author makes a very bold claim. He argues that identity is not a fixed biological trait you are born with. It's just a looping story you constantly tell yourself.
Right. Nobody is born a sneakerhead.
Nobody.
Nobody comes out of the womb as a minimalist or a digital nomad or a Tesla person.
You become those things through sheer repetition. You tell yourself a story, you perform actions that validate the story, and eventually the story hardens into who you think you are.
And brands that actually understand the engineering of obsession, they don't waste their time selling you the functional benefits of their products.
They feed your identity loop.
Yes. They give you the vocabulary to repeat your own story. When Apple tells you to think different or Nike says, just do it, they aren't giving you instructions on how to use a computer or a shoe.
They're handing you a script.
Exactly. They are telling you who you are, or more accurately, who you desperately aspire to be. Once you accept their script as your own belief, the brand earns VIP access to your internal identity loop.
And you can track the exact linguistic moment this psychological fusion takes place. The text highlights a fascinating metric for this.
It's a great metric.
It's the moment someone stops using the word they and starts using the word we when talking about a corporation.
Identity fusion.
Exactly. When a consumer says, we Apple users know better than to use Android, or we need to fix our defensive line this season, when talking about a sports team they literally just watch on television.
Right. The text uses the example of hardcore anime fans, too.
Oh, yeah.
They don't just passively consume 20 minutes of animation a week. They speak in quotes from the show. They wear the crests of the fictional clans on their actual clothing.
Or look at football tribalism. When hardcore fans argue about whether Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo is the greatest of all time, they aren't actually debating statistics, goal ratios, or pass completion percentages.
No, it's never about the stats.
It's a proxy war of values.
Exactly. It's a debate about natural genius versus relentless hard work. By arguing for one player, they are defending the philosophy they have built their own lives around. They are defending a part of themselves.
But this is where I start to feel a little uncomfortable.
It gets dark here.
If identity fusion is this powerful, if people are literally grafting a corporate entity or a fictional character onto their own ego, what happens when this goes too far?
That is the big question.
Because leaving a fused brand isn't like, canceling your Spotify subscription. If it's part of you, leaving it feels like self-betrayal. It feels like grief.
It is literal grief, and the author absolutely does not shy away from the dark side of this. The text brings up a very extreme, but unfortunately real, example of what happens when this fusion disintegrates.
The actor example.
Yes. It details a fan of a massive, universally loved celebrity actor. Suddenly, this actor is caught up in a horrific, undeniable public scandal. Evidence is everywhere.
It's inescapable.
Right. And instead of the fan stepping back and saying, wow, I guess I didn't know the real person, the fan doubles down.
This part was hard to read.
The text describes this fan posting a photo online of their own bleeding wrist. They literally self-harmed to prove their unwavering loyalty to this disgraced actor.
That is incredibly heavy. Why would someone do that? Why hurt yourself for a stranger who just proved they aren't who you thought they were?
Because the fan couldn't handle the crushing weight of the cognitive dissonance. Remember Raju and the monster?
Oh, wow.
It's the exact same mechanism, just scaled up to a tragic level. The actor had betrayed the fundamental story the fan had built their entire identity and online community around.
So their whole world is collapsing.
Exactly. So rather than accept the truth and go through the agonizing process of rewriting their own identity, which feels like psychological death, the fan tried to violently protect the old story by proving their devotion.
They weren't bleeding for the adder.
No, they were bleeding to protect their own fragile self-concept.
Wow. They were protecting the scaffolding of their own mind, and the author issues a very stark, explicit warning to founders, marketers, and designers right here.
A very necessary warning.
Obsession is not a neutral tool. When you start pulling these psychological levers, when you successfully engineer this kind of deep attachment, you are actively shaping fragile human identities. You are holding someone's emotional vulnerability in your hands. You have to build with extreme ethical intent.
It's a profound responsibility. You aren't just wireframing landing pages or writing clever copy. You are building the raw narrative materials that people use to construct themselves.
Okay, so if Our identity is sustained by this looping story we tell ourselves, and that story is anchored in our core memories. How exactly do brands engineer these memories in the first place so they actually stick?
Right, because we see so much noise.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
think about it. You and I see hundreds, maybe thousands of ads and brand interactions every single day. We fuse with almost none of them. Most of them wash right over us.
hmm
So what makes one specific experience lodge itself in the brain and become a memory?
The foundational architectural rule the book provides here is imprints over impressions.
Imprints over impressions.
Yes, obsession does not live in the pixels on a screen. It doesn't live in the frequency of your retargeting ads. It lives in the pulse.
The pulse.
Neurologically, the human brain is designed to filter out the predictable. If you see 100 predictable social media posts, your brain literally deletes them from short-term memory to save energy.
It just dumps the data.
Exactly. The brain only remembers what disrupts the pattern. It remembers the exact moment a stimulus made you feel a spike of emotion.
And the text mentions two primary tools for creating these deep neural imprints: symbols and rituals.
Let's start with symbols.
Right. A symbol's job is to shrink a massive, complex ideology into a single, instantaneous glance.
Like a visual shorthand.
Exactly. A silhouette of a bitten apple, a pair of golden arches, a red rectangle with the words supreme in white futura font.
You know them instantly.
These symbols bypass the analytical brain entirely and go straight to the emotional center. You don't read a symbol, you feel it.
Because they compress years of identity building into milliseconds. But a symbol on its own is static. A symbol needs to be paired with a ritual to become active.
How so?
Well, if a symbol shrinks big ideas into a visual, a ritual shrinks big emotions into a physical action.
Okay, I'm tracking.
Think about the intense, almost religious precision of unboxing a brand new iPhone.
Oh, the box.
The exact amount of friction designed into the cardboard so the lid glides off at a specific, agonizingly slow speed.
It builds so much anticipation.
Right. Or the specific weighted glass of a luxury candle and the act of lighting it to signal the end of a workday. The iconic startup chime of a PlayStation console.
Oh man, that PlayStation sound, it instantly transports you.
It does. And these are not functional product features. The iPhone box could just pop open like a cheap pizza box.
But that friction is an identity habit.
Exactly. And what's crucial for any small startup founder listening to this, you do not need Apple's billion-dollar R&D budget to create a ritual. You don't need custom hardware.
What do you need?
A ritual is simply any design sequence that turns routine usage into a feeling of belonging. It can be a specific phrase in your onboarding email or a unique physical gesture you ask users to do.
But wait, if a ritual becomes too predictable, doesn't it just become another boring pattern that the brain filters out? Because the author explicitly says that while predictability builds comfort, obsession requires tension. We need friction.
We absolutely need tension. I mean, a rubber band has no power until it's stretched.
That's a great way to put it.
That's where the twin engines of scarcity and surprise come into play. Scarcity speaks directly to the ancient reptilian brain. It says, this resource will not be here forever. Only a select few will survive to get it.
It triggers our evolutionary hunger to hoard what is rare.
Exactly. Surprise, on the other hand, is chemical. When a pattern is unexpectedly broken in a positive way, the brain releases a massive spike of dopamine.
It's like the slot machine effect.
Perfectly said. It breaks the monotony of daily life.
Yeah.
That's why streetwear brands do unannounced mystery drops at 3 a.m.
Or why a sudden, massive plot twist in a TV show dominates the cultural conversation for weeks.
Right. They forcibly instruct the brain to pay hyper-attention because the rules of reality just briefly changed.
Which perfectly sets up my absolute favorite concept from this part of the book, designing the ghost.
The ghost. Such a cool concept.
It is. The text describes the ghost as the emotional silhouette burned into your senses that lingers long after the actual experience ends. It's why you catch yourself randomly humming a tune from a video game you haven't played in 3 days, or why you keep thinking about a specific line of dialogue from a movie while you're, just washing the dishes.
And how do you deliberately design a ghost? The practical application the author gives is brilliantly counterintuitive.
You have to leave a thread untied.
Yes, you deliberately leave a question unanswered. You provide just enough compelling information to hook them, but you absolutely hold back the final piece of the puzzle.
It's the Zygarnik effect, right?
Exactly. The human mind despises an incomplete loop. It hates a void.
It wants closure.
Right. So when you leave an experience slightly unresolved, The user's subconscious actively works in the background to finish the puzzle on its own.
The incomplete narrative literally haunts the user.
It forces them to return to your app, your website, or your content, just to see if their internal resolution was correct.
Hmm.
You are no longer spending money to chase their attention. They are actively returning to you to resolve their own internal psychological tension.
That is genius. Okay, so we spent a lot of time in the deep end of the neuroscience and psychology here. We thoroughly understand the why. We know how stories hijack the amygdala, how the illusion of control builds safety, how identities fuse, and how tension creates memory imprints.
The foundation is set.
Now let's pivot to the highly practical how, because if I'm a founder, how do I actually build this?
That's the million-dollar question.
The author provides a step-by-step engineering framework, breaking the journey into 4 distinct phases: spark, loop, mirror, and myth.
Let's walk through these, starting with phase 1, the spark.
The spark is your ignition point. But it's vital to note that a spark is not about going viral. It's not about being the loudest person in the feed.
No, a spark is about creating emotional déjà vu. It's an initial encounter that bypasses logic and hits the animal brain before the user even consciously understands what they are looking at.
The text uses a phrase I absolutely love for this. It says, your design must be familiar with a fracture.
Familiar with a fracture. It's the uncanny middle ground.
Explain that a bit more.
Think about how the brain processes novelty. If a brand or a product is completely alien, like if it looks like nothing you've ever seen before, the brain rejects it as too much cognitive effort to understand.
It's just too weird.
Right. But if it's perfectly familiar, the brain ignores it because it's safe and boring. You have to find the micro glitch in reality. The book's example of Oatly, the oat milk brand, is a masterclass in this.
Yes. Think about the first time you saw Oatly. It's a standard cardboard carton. It's sitting in the refrigerated aisle next to 50 other milks. The context is perfectly boringly familiar.
Right.
But then you look closely at the packaging, and the copywriting is talking to you like a sarcastic, slightly neurotic best friend.
It's complaining about the legal department or making a joke about advertising.
It breaks the fourth wall. That is the fracture. It unsettles your expectations just enough to force your brain to lock in and pay attention.
And sometimes, the most sophisticated spark is the act of withholding the spark altogether. The power of restraint.
Like holding back.
Yes. Imagine a brand that launches an all-black coming soon page with a single cryptic symbol and absolutely no explanation. Or a character in a show who wears a mask and refuses to speak.
By offering a void, you invite the audience to lean in.
Exactly. They fill that empty space with their own imagination, their own fears, and their own desires, which guarantees immediate, heavy emotional investment.
So once you've captured them with that spark, that familiar fracture, you have to move them into phase 2, the loop. You have to establish a rhythm.
The formula the author provides for the loop is precise, drawing on behavioral psychology. It goes trigger, action, reward, meaning repeat.
But where most tech companies fail is that they stop at the reward.
Oh, all the time. They think the goal is just high frequency. They asked, how many times can we get them to open the app today?
But the goal of obsession engineering isn't frequency, it's intimacy. The loop does not permanently lock into the user's nervous system until they reach that 4th stage, meaning.
Right. Meaning is the linchpin. It's the stage where performing the action stops being about the external reward and starts proving who the user is.
Think about the language learning app Duolingo, or any fitness app that tracks your daily streak.
The streak is everything.
After 100 days, you aren't logging in to do a workout or learn Spanish just to get a little digital fireworks display on your screen. You are doing it because you are terrified of losing the identity you've built.
You want to look in the mirror and believe, I am the kind of disciplined person who does not break a 100-day streak.
The behavioral loop has officially become a ritualized identity.
Which is the perfect, seamless transition into phase 3 of the framework, the mirror.
The mirror.
This is a profound psychological moment where the audience begins to actively project themselves onto your brand. They fold the product into their sense of self.
There is a story in the text about a boy named Jason that perfectly captures the subtlety of this phase.
Oh, the skater story.
Right. Jason is a young kid who grows up idolizing his older cousin, Richard. Now, Richard is a skateboarder. He's got this effortless, rebellious gravity to him. Jason is mesmerized by it, but Jason himself never actually learns how to ride a skateboard. He's not a skater. But jump forward 10 years, Jason is wearing the exact brand of skate shoes Richard used to wear. He buys vintage hoodies from 90s skate brands. When he edits videos for his corporate job, he uses the gritty fisheye lens style from classic skate tapes.
Right.
If you were to stop Jason on the street and ask him why he loves that shoe brand, he wouldn't talk about his cousin. He'd just say, I don't know, man, it just fits my vibe. It gets me.
But the truth is, the brand became a mirror. It reflects his own self-concept, the coolness and rebellion he originally projected onto his cousin.
That story illustrates the collapse of the boundary between the consumer and the creator.
When a brand successfully becomes a mirror, the dynamic fundamentally changes. The audience stops defending the utility of your product, and they start fiercely defending themselves.
Which paves the final golden road to phase 4, the myth.
The stage of permanence. The text defines a myth as the moment when a newcomer to your brand feels more like a religious pilgrim than a retail customer.
It's the moment Harley-Davidson officially stops selling internal combustion engines and starts selling the pure, unadulterated concept of American freedom.
A myth is an invisible cultural story that shapes visible economic behavior. It's the ultimate pinnacle of branding.
You know you've achieved myth status when your audience can perfectly articulate your core values and tell your origin story without ever actually quoting your marketing materials.
It becomes immune to traditional business threats. Reason, competitive pricing, or a rival's new feature set don't matter anymore because your brand now lives in the sacred, untouchable architecture of their memory.
So if I'm a founder listening to this, sitting in my apartment trying to build the next great company, how do I actually write a myth? Because it sounds a bit magical. It does.
Yeah.
But the book breaks it down into very practical mechanics in section 6, from magnetic to mythic. It introduces the concept of the mythic triad.
Yes, the text is very clear that you can't just declare yourself a myth. You have to build the structural foundation for it. The mythic triad requires 3 non-negotiable elements: an origin story, a prophecy, and a villain.
Let's unpack each of those because they are so actionable. First, the origin story. The rule here is forged, not funded.
Forged, not funded. I love that.
Nobody cares that you raised $5 million from a venture capital firm. That's not a story, that's a transaction.
Right.
An origin story has to answer this. What deep, agonizing tension birthed you? You have to prove to your audience that your existence was an absolute necessity. You have to show that a problem in the world punched you in the gut so hard that you had no choice but to build a solution to fix it.
It's the classic hero's journey. Then you need the second element, the prophecy.
The prophecy.
This is a vision of the future, so staggeringly bold that it actually makes people a little nervous to doubt you. It's not a mission statement about maximizing shareholder value.
Nobody is inspired by that.
No one. It's saying, we are building the fundamental infrastructure that your grandchildren will use to communicate. It replaces the traditional marketing call to action with pure, unwavering conviction.
And then there's the third element, which I think is the sharpest, most difficult, but most vital piece of advice in the whole book: the villain.
Yes.
If you want a myth, you have to define what you are fighting against. Defining your villain perfectly defines your value, but the author is explicitly clear here. Your villain should almost never be your direct corporate competitor.
No, it shouldn't be a specific person. It needs to be a massive systemic force.
Exactly. Your villain is mediocrity. Your villain is gatekeepers. Your villain is the soul-crushing nature of surveillance capitalism.
You have to draw a massive line in the cultural sand and force people to choose a side. Because human beings do not follow leaders simply because those leaders have a high IQ or a good product.
We follow leaders because we see them bleeding on the battlefield, fighting the exact same invisible forces that frustrate us in our daily lives.
Okay, so you have your triad. You have your story, your prophecy, and your villain. But a myth can't just be a monologue. The author stresses that obsession desperately wants to be performed.
It wants to be acted out in the real world.
Yes, which requires co-creation and ritual actions. If you want to cement ownership, you have to let the audience put their fingerprints on the myth. You build a playground, but they invent the games.
This is why giving your most rabid fans a space, like a dedicated Discord server, is so vital.
You encourage fan art. You design massive digital scavenger hunts. You leave Easter eggs in your code. You let them feel like they are co-authors of the brand's unfolding reality.
And this brings us back to the power of signature moves, which we touched on earlier with symbols. The text points to anime again, because anime is the undisputed king of ritual action.
Oh, totally.
Think about the physical posture of a kid pretending to be Goku, cupping his hands at his side, charging up energy, and screaming Kamehameha.
Right, everyone knows it.
Or Naruto ending every confident declaration with his catchphrase, Databayo.
Oh.
Or, in Western pop culture, tens of thousands of fans holding exactly 3 fingers in the air during a specific bridge of a Coldplay concert.
Or the entire theater collectively gasping and cheering during a Marvel post-credit scene.
Yes, these actions are physical triggers. They activate a shared communal memory. When you do that specific hand gesture in a crowd of thousands doing the exact same thing, it's a physical handshake across time and space.
It tells your nervous system, hey, you feel this exact frequency too, I'm not alone.
Exactly. When your audience begins to organically mimic your moves, you have transcended being a product. You have become a cultural ritual.
And this, naturally, inevitably, tips over into the realm of worship. The text gets very deep into the sociology of this.
It does.
The founder builds the altar, but it's the audience who decides to worship. The author lists out the modern shrines where this worship takes place. It's the overlapping, chaotic collage of specific brand stickers you choose to put on the back of your laptop.
Or the highly curated aesthetic of your phone's lock screen.
Right. It's the ultra-exclusive OG role you earned in a private Discord server. These aren't just aesthetic choices. They are tokenized emotions. They are public declarations of faith.
And the book gives the ultimate staggering example of this kind of absolute devotion. It's the story of Rajinikanth.
Oh, this is incredible.
The legendary superstar actor in South India, often referred to as Thalaiva, or the boss. His fans do not just buy movie tickets. They do not just wait for the reviews in the paper.
No, they take it to another level.
When a new movie releases, they perform ancient religious rituals for him. They perform milk abhishekam. They literally climb scaffolding to pour hundreds of liters of milk over massive 60-foot cardboard cutouts of his face.
It's wild to see.
They light thousands of firecrackers. They perform arter, waving sacred flames before the projection screen, before the film even starts. It is literal faith in motion. Because to them, he is not an actor reciting lines. He is a living symbol of absolute power, resilience, and style.
He is the mythic, invincible version of themselves that they project onto the screen.
It's breathtaking to witness.
And naturally, as these cult-like, hyper-obsessed followings grow and mature, sociological structures begin to form within them. Castes emerge. Gatekeeping and strict hierarchies become the norm.
Right.
The text points to the OG mentors in early NFT communities, or the older generation of sneakerheads who battle aggressively online against newcomers trying to buy early drops. In these communities, your literal proximity to the source, like how early you were, how much you suffered to get the product, dictates your status and rank within the tribe.
It's fascinating because it's essentially a status game disguised as passion.
Yes.
The early adopters, the hardcore fans, they gatekeep so aggressively because their own identity was forged back when the brand was obscure, when it wasn't socially accepted to like it. If suddenly everyone is allowed in, if the brand goes totally mainstream, what makes the early adopters special anymore?
Nothing.
They attack the newcomers to protect the uniqueness of their own identity.
Which is the perfect pivot point for us. Because we've spent the last hour marveling at the sheer power of this architecture. We've built the tribe, we've coded the myth, we've generated the following. But the author devotes the final chapters of the book to a heavy, necessary warning of the shadows of this altar.
The dark side.
We have to look at the dark side of the loop.
Yeah, let's go there. Because when this highly calibrated gamification goes wrong or is used purely for extraction, the results are psychologically damaging. We end up with behavioral addiction dressed up in the costume of ambition.
The author brings up Duolingo again here, but through a much darker lens. Think about your own habits or someone you know who is obsessed with their streak.
I know a few people like that.
Are you truly opening that app at 11:45 p.m. because you have a burning intrinsic desire to conjugate French verbs before midnight? No. You're opening it because your nervous system is mildly terrified of breaking a 400-day streak and disappointing a cartoon green owl.
The app has hijacked your loss aversion.
Exactly. You are hooked on the feeling of winning and the relief of not losing rather than the actual process of learning.
It's a dopamine breadcrumb trail that just whispers, you haven't failed yet, you're still worthy today. And this kind of psychological distortion doesn't just keep us glued to screens, it fundamentally narrows our worldview.
It does.
Obsession, by its very nature, becomes a rigid cognitive filter that aggressively edits out nuance. Dissent or constructive criticism is no longer viewed as a difference of opinion. It is viewed as an existential threat. This is exactly how deep ideological echo chambers form.
The author brings up the Marvel versus DC fandom debates to illustrate this toxicity. Have you noticed how these arguments escalate?
Oh, they get so vicious.
The fans don't just critique the CGI or the pacing of the movies anymore. They immediately attack the fundamental morality of the opposing fan base. They act as if preferring Batman's narrative arc over Iron Man's means you are a fundamentally worse, less ethical human being.
It's absurd.
They lose their minds over Kate movies because they aren't actually defending a fictional universe. They are desperately defending their own fragile, fused identity.
And the trap doesn't just snap shut on the fans. There is a massive, crushing trap for the creators and founders themselves, the creator trap.
Oh, this happens all the time.
The founder builds the myth, the audience worships it, and then the founder becomes addicted to the worship. They become terrified of alienating the mob they created, so they stop taking creative risks because the crowd might not applaud.
They lose the very authenticity and spark that built the brand in the first place, slowly morphing into a hollow parody of themselves just to appease the algorithmic feedback loop.
Which brings us to the climax of the book, Chapter 13, The Future. Algorithms versus authenticity. Because the landscape is shifting radically, we are no longer just using psychology to engineer human obsession. We have built machines that are actively engineering us.
This part is truly mind-bending. The text argues that algorithms on social platforms no longer exist to guess what we want. They exist to actively program what we will want next.
Yes.
The machine tracks your micro-hesitations, your scroll speed, your late-night clicks, and it reflects your own psychological patterns back at you, injected with just enough curated novelty to make it feel like you are discovering it yourself.
It is mathematically calculated intimacy.
We originally built the internet to serve as an escape from the friction of reality, but now we use our physical reality merely as raw material to feed the internet. The concept of the avatar, your airbrushed Zoom face, your hyper-curated LinkedIn success story, your perfectly prompted AI-generated portrait has completely replaced the messy true self.
And the terrifying thing about the mechanics of obsession is that the brain doesn't care if the identity is real or synthetic.
Right. It only cares if the identity is repeated. We start fiercely defending the avatar.
Hey, let me challenge that for a second. The author claims we are grieving the loss of digital avatars more than physical losses. Isn't that a bit dramatic? I mean, isn't that just the standard cyclical panic every older generation has about new technology? People said reading novels would rot our brains in the 1800s.
It sounds like hyperbole until you look at the neuroscience of digital identity.
What does it show?
When a teenager loses access to an Instagram account with tens of thousands of followers, or a gamer gets banned and loses a character they spent 4 years building, the brain doesn't process that as a loss of software.
What does it process it as?
Functional MRI scans show that the brain processes it in the exact same regions that handle social rejection, grief, and physical pain. Because to the brain, that avatar was their locus of social standing. When the avatar is deleted, a literal piece of their constructed self-worth is annihilated.
That is sobering.
As builders, founders, and designers, we are now largely designing for the avatars of people, as seen through vast data trails, rather than the flesh and blood humans. And avatars always reward the predictable loop and punish anything genuinely new or challenging.
So if the machine is that powerful, how do we possibly fight back? How do we build things of real value in that environment? The text offers a profound defense mechanism. Rituals versus algorithms.
Algorithms are cold. They optimize strictly for automated attention and infinite speed. Rituals are human. They anchor us in stillness, intent, and friction.
Bringing deliberate, friction-heavy ritual back into digital creation is an act of absolute rebellion. It asks the user to stop scrolling and actually feel something rather than just looking at something.
And this leads to the author's final, radical proposition for anyone designing a product or a brand today. Designing for liberation.
Designing for liberation. I love the sound of that.
The entire tech industry for the last 20 years has been obsessed with designing for grip. How do we make the infinite scroll longer? How do we make the UX stickier?
What if we entirely flipped the brief? What if the ultimate measure of your brand's success isn't how many hours someone stayed trapped in your ecosystem, but the emotional state in which they left?
Right. Did they leave your app feeling lighter, Did they leave feeling more capable, more connected to reality, more themselves?
The author challenges us to design for brevity over bombardment, choose curiosity over psychological coercion, offer emotional closure instead of endless anxiety-inducing cliffhangers.
You must build an interface, a brand, or a story that ultimately sets people free, rather than caging them in a loop.
A story that actually ends on time, an interface that delivers value and then quietly gets out of the way. According to the text, that is what true generational legacy looks like when a brand finally matures.
Exactly. It's a profound evolutionary shift from a loop that traps you to a rhythm that expands you.
This has been an incredibly dense, unbelievably fascinating journey today. We started with the neurological safety that ancient stories provided around a campfire. We unpacked how the illusion of control and identity fusion hijack our nervous systems. And we broke down the exact architecture of building a myth, from origin stories to villains to ritual worship.
And finally, we confronted the dark reality of algorithmic desire and the rebellion of designing for liberation. Obsession engineering is so much more than a marketing framework. It is the literal architecture for human meaning.
I think the most fitting way to close this out is with the quote the author places at the very end of the text. It's the ancient first line of the Nirvana Shatakam, composed by Adi Shankaracharya. Not the mind, nor the intellect, nor the ego, nor the memory am I.
The author includes this not to tell us to detach from the world, but as a critical reminder. We are not the behavioral loops we find ourselves in, we're the quiet stillness that exists behind them.
That is a beautiful thought to anchor on, and it makes me think about the next horizon. Because if modern brands, and now massive AI algorithms, are constantly trying to perfectly engineer our desires and write our identity scripts for us, what happens to human evolution?
Scary thought.
If we eventually reach a point where our myths are no longer messily authored by us, but seamlessly, perfectly generated for us by a machine that knows us better than we know ourselves, maybe the ultimate luxury of the future won't be found in a perfectly tailored product or a massive cult following. Maybe the ultimate luxury will simply be the rare, unengineered spaces where you are allowed the absolute freedom of being completely undefined.
Just being yourself.
Exactly. Something to chew on the next time you feel that tiny spike of anxiety to check a streak or the urge to go to war in a comment section to defend a brand. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the loops you find yourself in. We'll see you next time.